Hey guys and girls, Bored now back with you. On this video I will be talking about Stranger Things 2 Episode 7 Chapter 7. It is called The Lost Sister. Full spoilers from the start of this review, and yes, oh boy, it's that episode. The episode which pretty much everybody universally hates, and you know what, I'm no different. I'm not going to hold back. This is a completely pointless episode. Not only is it completely pointless and unnecessary, it's a bad episode pretty much from start to finish. It's very dull, very hard to really get through, to engage with a lot of the times. It's very silly at times, and yeah, I think that's the problem. Even if you can somehow justify it as like an important episode for 11 as a character, because obviously the crux of it is then it's her really deciding between the two lives and whether she goes down one path or the other, because these groups of characters that she meets in this episode and her sort of quote unquote lost sister of the title convince her that maybe using her powers for vengeance is actually the right way to go. Then maybe she should get vengeance on those who have hurt her in the past, including the guy who gave her mother electric shock treatment, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the dilemma. So the episode starts, and it's a very sort of rush kind of like setup to this happening, because Al is with Becky, obviously her auntie, and she starts asking about the other girl, the girl who was with her, you know, at the lab, and obviously wondering where she is. And Becky starts talking about her, starts like pulling files, and then what happens later on is Al catches Becky on the phone to, I'm assuming, like the cops or the government or something, just obviously, and nothing malicious about it, but just obviously she's concerned for 11, and 11 is obviously, this freaks her out. She does a runner and she gets the coach to Chicago. So this is the group of characters we saw in the very first scene at the start of season 2, a group of punks, including the lost sister of the title. Who else? I think her name's like Coty, something like that anyway. And Al tracks her down, and she's with this other group of characters who I think are just normal. I think they're just like a group that she's come across who are like homeless and in similar circumstances. I think she's the only one with powers, and she demonstrates it to Al. And obviously, as I said, the sort of theme of the episode is that Al's going to be caught between this life and her life in Hawkins, the other life, which ultimately she's going to decide by the end of the episode. She has to go back, she has to help her friend, and that, you know, dishing out violence and vengeance, no matter how just it may seem, it is not the way to go. And we get the scene with the guy, as I said, and it's sort of the big moment which makes her mind up, because it turns out he's got kids in the apartment because they almost go all the way and actually kill him, and 11 makes the decision it's not the right thing to do. She stops Coty from killing him as well, and later on when the police come to get them, Al makes the decision then it's time to go back to Hawkins. So, as I said, a really sort of boring episode. First of all, the characters that she meets are really not. They're just terrible. They're absolutely flat. They're like stereotypical like street punks. they're annoying to like watch and listen to from the start. The actors are pretty bad. The one playing Coty I thought was a bad actress. Her accent is really terrible. I don't know what was going on with that, but her accent was bad, and overall I just found them annoying to be around. I didn't find them interesting at all. It's almost like they just put no thought into these characters. It's like they just saw like a standard 1980s type movie, and they just, went for the most generic basic characters. And I get it's more about Al than them anyway, but it's just when you're spending a whole episode in their company, at least make them a bit more interesting or engaging if you can ask us to spend time with them. But they really were very boring. As I said, quite annoying characters. It was hard to... Because I think on some level you're at least supposed to root for them because they're like, they're street kids and they've obviously had rough lives, but you just don't care about them at any point because, there's a scene where they're like breaking into a store and Al's with them and she starts using her powers and they're robbing the place, and they sort of justify it as... Because one of them says to like the shopkeeper at one point, you're just like a middleman, but your boss is like filthy rich. You're one of us. But that's the whole point. Is they're going after someone who isn't the problem. So it's like their whole argument is like totally flawed. But just so scenes like that just make it almost impossible for you to like give a damn about this group of characters. Also, there's just something about like leaving Hawkins and going to like this sort of generic view of Chicago. Again, I think they were going for like some sort of 1980s type like look of like big city life, but it's almost like the show gets Hawkins and gets like that small type, woodland type town, and it's almost like it's at home portraying that sort of setting, but as soon as it moves to a different setting, it sort of has no real clue. It just looks as like, as I said, like it's just ripped out of like any basic like 80s type movie where you have street gangs, you have people living on streets, and it just didn't feel very convincing at all. And I don't really have much else to say about the episode. It was, as I said, it's a needless episode. It does feel like it was like a backdoor pilot, or they considered, maybe having these characters and giving them their own spin-off, and then probably because the reception to this episode wasn't very good, they changed their minds. But it does almost feel like it's sort of like a pilot kind of thing for another show where they're like testing the waters, like a spin-off, because there's certain things. Because another thing that gets mentioned, the guy who they go after, who was, gave Elle's mother like the electric shock, he says at one point, then Brannigan's still alive. And Elle say, no, Papa's dead, but he's insisting that he's still alive. I'm not quite sure how he knows this. And this goes to something, it's almost like they're poking at the audience, because obviously when me and Rachel were talking about like the season 1 finale, she said that there's some fans out there who believe that he's still alive. So I wonder if that's just a wink and a nudge to the fans. But later on, like Brannigan like appears to Elle in like a vision type thing, and like I think partly to spur her on, like Cota's like kind of saying that he's still out there. You can still find him. You can still get revenge. But so that's another thing where it feels like they may be setting up like a storyline if they did like a spin-off, although it would be unlikely Elle would be in the spin-off, but that might have been just poking at the fans, as I said. But yeah, pointless episode, a not very good episode, very like unengaging to watch, and yeah, none of the charm or the fun that Stranger Things like a typical episode has. you just miss the other characters. That's the problem, and you realise then the show works so well because you have like a mix of characters that you care about and enjoy. Now, you have one in this episode which is Elle, but playing off these other characters, it's just, yeah, a bit tedious to watch. So, a bad episode, but luckily things are going to get back on track next time, because this really is the only ever bad episode of Stranger Things so far that I can recall anyway. Also, how cheesy was that shit with the butterfly that appeared from her powers? What the fuck? So that's The Lost Sister. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. And I'll be back with more Stranger Things soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.